Okay, I think that gives me the cue to get started. So I wanted to start with a bit more about the positioning of the book, really. So when me and Fernando started talking, we just finished doing quite a lot of research around the gaps between policy and legislation for accessibility and what that means in practice and in real life delivery. So we wanted to create a book that spoke to the why behind digital accessibility and not necessarily the what or how. There's lots of really great books already available that talk quite in depth about what accessibility is and how to make products and services accessible. So this one, we really wanted to dive into the why and why it matters. And so Chapter 7 really focuses on emerging technologies and the future of accessibility and how people live their lives with technology around them. So I wanted to mention somebody who's in the book called Zayad. So Zayad became blind through glaucoma, and he went to work one morning with no sight impairments whatsoever. By lunchtime, he was down to 8% blurred vision in one eye alone, and otherwise and completely blind in the other eye. And that was due to glaucoma. So we recently caught up with Zayad as well, about a year after we wrote that chapter of the book about his story. And it just is so evident that technology and life is so closely knitted together, whether you've got access needs or not. We all live in that kind of modern digital age where technology is part of our everyday lives. And what Zayad was telling us just last week was that now his white cane has ChatGTP in it, and that helps in terms of him navigating around the city centre to find the nearest coffee shop, and helps with that safety element as well. He also talked about things like the new glasses he's just purchased, which have AI built into them. So he no longer has to rely on people in his home to tell him whether he's picking up a can of beans or a can of chopped tomatoes. The glasses can do that for him because he can't do that with his own sight. So I think it's the chapter really talks about how technology is increasing safety and independence for people where needed. And we talk quite a lot about how a lot of these emerging technologies don't only support those that require it to live safely and independently, but also help many other people as well. So the example I'll give is that kind of voice software, where it was voice activation software was originally around accessibility. Many of us now have Alexas or Google solutions in our home, and we talk to our smartphones and devices on a regular basis. So there are transferable ways that technology for accessibility then does improve wider experiences as well. But I'll hand over to Fernando now to go a little bit more into detail about some of the emerging technologies that we talked about in the book.
Thank you. So yeah, so like my background obviously is very geeky. So I love sort of playing with tech and stuff like that. And obviously a lot of the technologies that we meet now and that are evolving now, especially with this buzzword of AI that's everywhere and is coming in, sometimes is given the holy grail of this is the solution to everything. And I'll show you some of the things that are in the book. I'll actually show you a little bit more now. So I'm going to share my screen, show you like a couple of like a video and do a live demo of a couple of things so you can actually see for real what's in text version in the book. And sort of like that will give us hopefully a good discussion point going forward with the Q&As, because a lot of these are sort of like, yes, this is great, but there's always a but. So give me a second. Let me just share my screen quickly with you. And then I can show you a couple of things. Right, can you see a screen saying sensors? Excellent. So a lot of the stuff that we do have to do with sort of like how can we use technology to aid in something called independent living. So as we progress, as humanity progresses, we're going to have an aging population, and more so as we progress. And a lot of the times, independence is a big thing. So we want to be able to live independently for as long as possible, by ourselves in our familiar surroundings. And it's often the times that we want to facilitate people to do that. And one of the ways that we do that is by making sure that everybody's okay in their familiar surroundings without needing human intervention all the time. And one of the things that is presented in that chapter is the use of AI with sensor technology and data science. So when you have a bunch of rooms and you install a bunch of sensors in all these rooms, such as these, you can start getting readings. And we can tell this is luminosity, so this is light, and we can tell how healthy an environment is. It's very important for you to get light, natural light, light in any source. So we can see, this is where light comes up. Then um, the second sort of round thing is when we switch on the light at night, and then we're going to sleep, so we switch off the light. Darkness, darkness in the living room until natural light again from the sun starts going up, and we have this repeated for many, many days, and everything is sort of relatively okay because we know that the person is getting sunlight. Uh, Temperature is the same. I'm guessing there in Toronto and in Canada, because you've got much colder temperatures, you're going to have the same problem as the UK has, where people are trying to save electricity, people are trying to sort of like save up on it, and temperatures, especially in independent living houses where a person is of a certain age, they don't switch on the heating because they want to save money, and this creates lots of disease, that creates lots of problems, health issues, and a lot of unfortunately fatalities. So we can monitor this automatically and get alerts every time something happens. Now, we see here that there wasn't an alert because as soon as the temperature dropped under a certain point, it went back up again because the heating would come on. So we know this is a healthy apartment. We've got those thresholds. And here we got alerted that something had happened. And actually, the person decided for the first time in many, many years to actually use a log burning fire next to a sensor rather than their central heating. And that sort of like kicked off the temperature sensor. But that's absolutely fine. We can also do things like if somebody's got dementia, but we want to make sure that they're having they're keeping healthy, they're having a shower every day. It's demeaning to call them and saying, "Are you keeping healthy?" And it's also sometimes difficult to get them to remember what they've done all the time because they might lie. And they don't definitely don't feel good with getting these phone calls. But if you have a humidity sensor that detects that there's a humidity increase in the shower every day, then we can safely assume that either they've switched on the shower and left, but we've got sensors to know if they've moved or not, that everything's happening. And the good thing about all this that I'm showing you is that it can be masked behind a black sort of box. We don't need a human being to sit down and monitor behavior and know what everybody's doing every day. We just need certain rules and an AI, which is good and bad, right? To figure out what the sort of good and bad the patterns are, and then if there's a breakage to let us know. For example, this is movement in the living room, where one of the biggest problems that we've got is people sitting on their couch for too long, and they create issues because their mobility is bad. If we know that somebody's moving a lot, this is great. One day, do you see in the middle that red sort of detection? So AI detected a pattern. This person is in the living room, does this kind of thing, but on this specific day, they weren't as active. So we gave them a call to see if they were okay, and indeed, that day they weren't very well. They had a problem, so they stayed in bed longer and they went to bed earlier. So, we can start detecting these sort of things. And again, it's behind a black box. AI will tell us and only alert us if there's an issue. We don't need to know what everybody's doing every day manually to do this. Similarly, with motion sensors, if we have bathroom sensors to know when somebody's going to the bathroom, if long term, we can actually detect things like diabetes. If you have more regular sort of like visits to the bathroom, that might be an indicator, for example, diabetes. Conversely, also, we can have a look at things like imagine one day you go to bed, oh, sorry, you go to the bedroom at 10 o'clock at night and you haven't moved until 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, that probably means that you're just sleeping, right? But if you go to the bathroom at 10 o'clock at night and you're still there at 4 o'clock in the morning, that's not very natural. You either had a very, very bad burrito or there's something seriously wrong, right? Usually it's the second. I had a colleague whose aunt was on the floor in the living room for 3 days before anybody realized that there's a problem. right? And these are real issues. And what we can do with this kind of stuff is we can create automatic sort of interventions. So this is Milo. This is one of the robots that we use. Goes around, very, very cute. And we've got different types of technologies on this one and many other robots that we put in the house. So here's I only mentioned this one, okay? So this camera
Oh, thank
obviously
you.
got,
I agree.
as you'll see in a second, we have voice recognition and we have skeletal tracking. Now you see that that robot detects there's a human being there where the skeleton is, and at this point in time detects and we use AI to do this. We use AI to figure out, okay, the speed at which they go down and what sort of their body looks like, if they're sitting down, if they've fallen. And as soon as somebody falls, there's a shout.
A fall has been detected. Are you
I
okay?
don't know if you can hear that, but the robot shouts, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" If there is no response and nobody gets up, then it automatically can do two things. Number one, can activate the camera for your friends or your family or somebody to have a look at what's going on and communicate with you directly, or it will alert in an email, in a phone call, and somehow a carer to be able to intervene quickly and figure out what has happened. The problem that we have with this, obviously, is that if we activate a camera, there's a camera. And if somebody can break into that camera, then that's a safety issue. That's a privacy issue. Also, would you like to randomly get a camera switched on if you're changing? So, we can do all kinds of other technologies, like, for example, having sensors which only detect heat. So it can detect you as an outline, but not really who it is or what's happening, but it can detect your body shape and it can detect this is from the ceiling. You can see sort of like two people sitting there and some people coming in a minute there and kind of talking to them. But we don't need to know what they look like to understand behavior, and we don't even need to know what their behavior is if we can train AI to do it properly. And perhaps the last thing I will say before we move on to more questions is we can start to do interesting and fun things. A lot of the times, if you're disabled, you are excluded from things not because people don't want to help or don't want you to be included, but because sometimes there are no means. So imagine that you want to play a game, but you're blind. How much access to gaming do you have if you have no vision? It's usually almost non-existent, or the few games that do exist seem to be very, very sort of how do I say this? They're not very fun to play. They basically say to you, well, you've got this disability, you've got this limitation, and therefore we're only going to create this very simplistic game for you so that we can say that there's a game for you. But actually, it's not as fun. So this is where we work with Google, where we go, Google comes to us and says, listen, if somebody is, we're going to give you a big challenge. If somebody has no vision whatsoever and has no dexterity in their hands whatsoever, how can they play a game on a mobile phone? Can you get that done for us? And we said, well, okay, what are the modalities that we do have? And that's speech and sound, right? So immediately we came up with a game that now, because we have natural language processing, which has become very, very good with AI, we can actually sort of like not have any controls. So we've created a game where you can play, and theoretically, if you are blind or if you are sighted, you can still enjoy it. So the threshold and the target of this is to enjoy the game. I'll give you a demo of it just for like 30 seconds or so. Okay.
Please say start
Can
game
you
in
hear
order for
that?
the game to start.
Yeah. Start game. Now I've got to say, this is supposed to be with headphones. So start game. This is supposed to be with headphones and it comes with binaural audio. So if you've got headphones, you can hear characters exactly in 3D space where they are. Obviously, I can't do that on this demo, right? But you'll get an idea. And there are no commands. You just speak. And depending on what you say, the game changes and adapts to what you're saying so that it can progress, right?
I'm not hearing anything, Fernando.
You're not hearing anything.
No. Is anyone
Mhm.
else?
Ah, right.
No.
Okay. So that's probably a Zoom thing where they dampen the sound. Let me stop sharing the screen. See, in Teams, I know how to do this, where I can get sound to work better. I'll send you maybe a demo of it. So I'll send you an APK. Anybody who wants to install it can try it. Let me just tell you what it's about. Um, this is an escape the room, right? And it's a demo, and we've got another demo of a character called Nellie Bly. And it starts with, like you find yourself in a room, and somebody's sort of like talking to you from the next, so you can't see anything because it's pitch black. And obviously, this is a simulation of sort of being blind. So you can play it as well, but you're not acting as if you're blind. You're just in a very dark place that you can't see. And it's got the binaural audio, so if somebody's talking to you from the back on the right and says, "Hey, I'm in the next cell, are you okay?" And then it asks you a series of questions, and you can say to it, "No, I'm not all right, leave me alone." And the person backs off and doesn't speak to you for a bit and then tries to engage you. And then if you're positive, then he tries to talk to you a bit more and says to you, "Do you want to try and escape together?" And you go all these series of questions, and there are no set yes, do this, no. So depending on what you say, it'll analyze your speech, and it will go in a different pattern. It's very similar to, remember when we were kids and we used to read these books where you went, if you want to do this, go through that door, go to page 42. If you want to go through the window, go to page 102. And you used to make these decisions and create an adventure of yourself based on these books. So we've made this so that we can sort of give the opportunity for fun experience, no matter what your level of disability or non-disability is, so we can capture that fun sort of thing. So I guess I'll stop now, but that's just a little bit of a glance of chapter 7, because it shows us sort of like what AI and what sort of these emerging technologies can do. We've also got different VR sort of experiences in AR now, but perhaps that's more for a discussion. It's a glimpse to say that AI can be a lot of help, but you notice that without human intervention, AI can be wrong. So what if sort of it alerts us, and it has alerted us if you've seen 2 or 3 times and it was wrong. There wasn't anything wrong. It was just like a blip, but it just goes nuts because it's trained to do a specific thing. It's trained and it does it really well. It identifies differences in patterns. But a human being would be a bit more apprehensive to go, there's a problem and raise an alert. It would be, maybe there's something that we don't understand here. Maybe it's an outlier. Maybe as it progresses, it will be better and better. Um, Robotics will be better and better. We'll have a lot of that in the house. Asia's ahead of us, 1,000 miles ahead of us in this sort of regard. Um, our robots are trying to be a bit more needy now, so we use something called the Google Maps effect, where um, it's not great to just have a robot in the house and going, either use this robot or we're going to put you in a care home, right? That's not a very good way to go about it. Technology acceptance shows that you need to start getting attached to things. So when you put a pet in somebody's house, mobility increases. Cognitively, they do much better because they feel useful. They feel like they're taking care of something rather than the other way around. So in technology, when we do little tricks and create characters, especially now with AI, when we can create characters, that's a much, much more fun experience. And the robot can say something like, "What's the weather outside?" Because I have no eyes and I can't see. And then the person will look outside and say, "Well, it's sunny." So we've created this feeling of need, but what has the robot done? It's asked a question and tests, has the person responded in a logical way? Everything is fine. It's much better than saying, you need to solve what's plus 5 plus 5, because I need to check if everything's all right with you. It's much less sort of like problematic. And there's this symbiotic relationship between the two. So I'm going to be quiet now because there's a lesson to be learned that Joanna's going to talk to you about now. I just wanted to spark some interest from some conversation and a little bit about, show you a bit more about sort of actively what chapter 7 was about in the book.
And this is where you'll see why me and Fernando work so well together. He's always the very exciting look at all the opportunities, and I'm the what problems are we solving with it? So coming back to how are we considering ethics, how are we considering risk, how are we considering safety as well, and ensuring that we don't get too excited by all the opportunities through the Internet of Things and sensors, machine learning, AI, robotics, VR, AI. There's so many opportunities for technology to excite and create new ways of experiencing things, but always coming back to that, but what problem does it solve and how does it create a better overall experience for the person we're trying to serve? So my background over the last 20 years has been in public sector service and product design. So very much coming back to that, how does it help the people we're trying to serve and what problems is it solving? Because it gets very easy to get excited by all the fantastic and amazing opportunities that technology does bring. But we can have a lot of things that do really great stuff and then forget to solve the problems that we're trying to do. And as designers, I'm sure you'll relate to that as well. So yes, I think just a summary of the chapter really does really present what those opportunities may be and the diverse range of technologies that are available to do that. But to then have that balance and that compromise with where we introduce technology that we're confident that it solves a problem or fulfills a gap or a need, and that it does that in an ethical and safe way. And that's a summary of the chapter. Aaron, am I passing